Anthony. Good morning to you. And thank you for agreeing to say yes to be interviewed on my podcast today. My name is Nicolette. I am the podcast creator titled You're Worthless. Read that again. Juxtaposition of your very soul. So when I read your profile, I felt this resonance immediately. Assume. I hope you're Asian, and I am Asian myself. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I'm a millennial, so growing up, education was always imposed to me, and the whole notion of getting good grades and then getting good job, it's just on me. And I had my own awakening and burnout last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and now I'm here. And a bit of a trivia. I am about to leave my corporate job
Oh, wow.
in the next
Congratulations.
2 months. 2 months. So I'm entering into something very new, uncharted territory for me at least, in the
Mm-hmm.
area of psychology. But we can talk more about that as I ask a bit more questions to you, and then we can have this conversation. But as my ritual, I would give a bit of introduction of my guest to my listeners today. So, if you don't mind, let me read a bit of your biography to our listeners, and then we can get down to business.
Sure.
All right. So, hi everyone. This is Anthony. His words: You are more than your job, and your career is more than a shiny resume. Much more. So, Anthony Kuo here is a career satisfaction coach, and he wants to help you intentionally craft a career you're excited to wake up for. He graduated from the NYU Stern School of Business in 2010 and subsequently took an 8-year tour through the Fortune 500 world, rising up the corporate ladder before realizing he was filling his bank account but leaving his soul empty. Wow. Anthony integrates his practical experience with his training as a transformational NLP practitioner to gently and playfully guide his clients through one of life's most omnipresent questions. What do you want to be when you grow up? Let's hear it from Anthony. Yay! Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm so glad that it resonated with you, my story and my message. It seems like it's very salient for where you are in your life.
When I read it, I felt this sink in my heart. I'm like, whoa, so he went through what I went through, so I'm not alone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so okay, Anthony, tell us, what was it like growing up as yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm Asian, I'm Chinese American, and I grew up as a first generation American in the United States. My parents immigrated from China and Taiwan. They met here and they were musicians. They met in the Eastman School of Music, which is one of the finest music schools in the world. And then they went on to go on to graduate school at Juilliard. So you can imagine the like world-class tier of musicians that they are. And my mom, before all this, was a child prodigy where she was performing recitals around the world when she was like 12 years old, I think was her first one. So, they came to this country and had me. And of course they wanted the best for me. And then later when my brother came along, they wanted the best for us. And according to this is very typical for Asian culture, coming from like the Confucian line of thinking. Education is the way to prosperity,
Better, yeah.
and accomplishment through your education, right? So I was very much encouraged in the direction of pursuing academic interests, getting good grades. And then also, as you might imagine, with my parents' musical background, I was trained in piano as well. And I was trained to a very high degree to the point where I could perform at Carnegie Hall when I was 17, which was, it's interesting. It is, I objectively know that is quite an accomplishment. And of course, I submitted the recording from that recital to colleges and got scholarships from that. Um,
Right.
and at the same time, I didn't really have the sense of like enjoying myself while I was doing that. It was something I did mainly out of obligation and wanting to achieve, but not really for my sense of like, this is how I want to express myself in the world. And you can already start to see here how the seeds were planted for me to go on into the corporate world and succeed in a certain way, but kind of neglect my inner self, my interests, and how I wanted to show up in the world. Because to be quite honest, I didn't know. I didn't really grow up in an environment where that was a discussion. It was a lot about
This
what
is the
can you
right
do?
way and the only way.
Yeah, it's very typical for our culture, right?
Yeah. And I think for me, it was more about the next generation having the better quality of life.
Yes.
Therefore, yeah, my mom and dad, they don't come up from a well-off family, so their only hope is that the next generation is not going to starve. At least there's something to be achieved there. But I like for me, I had this realization when I was at the lowest. I asked myself, if I were to strip all of my accolades and my achievements, who is Nicolette?
Hmm.
Or, I mean, if you, you even want to dig deeper to Carl Jung's perspective, who is self, right? Like, yeah. So that hit me hard that I had to lose myself in order to find myself again. And that's the universe. I guess that's for me, I guess that's the universe way of saying, okay, enough. You're astray for too long. Please come back to the right path. So,
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned like that moment of losing yourself because that's very parallel to my journey, and I think
mm,
to a lot of people, where it's painful to go through that process, right? It's certainly not comfortable, and everyone's going to have a different threshold for what triggers that. But I think it's also very important to listen to that and not sweep it under the rug with your gratitude journal or with like, oh, but look how good things are.
no.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of getting like gratitude, of course, is important, but that's a little bit getting into the realm of toxic positivity,
Yes, yes.
right?
And it's the cycle is just gonna repeat itself because
Yeah.
you're if you're not healed properly, you're just gonna track the same thing. It's just gonna be given to you on your face like that.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you learning? Is
Yeah,
there
but
something you're not
what is
learning?
that quote? I think it's Virginia Satir, since we're quoting psychologists here.
I mean, I'm
Uh,
not a psychologist. I know I am right now I am interested into that, but which one? Yeah, well,
uh,
you have to look.
I'm gonna look it up right now so I get it.
That's no
So I
worries.
get it
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
People prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty.
As I was saying, you said people prefer the certain miseries rather than the uncertain unknown, right? It was that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I was just saying, even though the unknown is possibly living their best life, because there's just something about stepping into the familiar, and
and it's
especially if you're sorry,
no,
and
no, no. Go ahead.
especially if you've already attained certain status in life, certain
Hmm.
power,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
will
and
feel saying
especially
it. It's
when
like
you
yeah.
especially when you don't fully have defined what you want next. For me, the most difficult period was when I was getting promoted in my corporate job, and I already knew inside of me that I didn't want it anymore. That the climb wasn't worth it. And I was looking at my bosses and what they were doing, what their life was like, what their day was like, and I was like, I'm not really that interested in that. No, thank you.
I'm like, yeah.
Um, and while it would have been a lot more money and that would have been nice, I guess, it wouldn't have like I had already kind of climbed up the to the point where more money would not have necessarily made my life happier because I was already comfortable. And it was really, really scary because it at that same moment I didn't know what I was going to do next. Like I had an idea, but I didn't have it all spelled out. I didn't have an existing client base. I didn't know if I was going to succeed. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it. And more to the point, the bar was really high in terms of I was already making a lot of money. So whatever I was going to leave for had to be better, so much
Had to
better.
be, yeah, had to compensate, had to be compensated like in the
Yeah. It was such a weird experience to um, leave my job and then have my income fall off a cliff for a
So
while. And then,
yeah, from
and
zero.
then, but then also, I felt so much better about myself, right? Because before all of this, my self-worth and my income were like tied together. And then it was very mind-boggling to separate them.
Yes. I'm taking a moment to, I felt the same way. That's why I said, like, if I don't have the car that I drive, the whatever, the house, the anything, to be honest, who is, if I were to die tomorrow, touch wood, how would I want to be remembered as? Yeah. Okay. So, let's talk about your journey. What was that pivotal moment that made you switch? That made you realize how important is career satisfaction and now becoming a career satisfaction coach?
Yeah. I, as I mentioned, it was kind of a slow build where, I mean, I knew from the moment I entered the corporate world that I wanted to work for myself one day. I just didn't know what that would look like. But I didn't,
Ooh,
I didn't have the idea and I certainly didn't have the experience and I didn't have the guts either. So I stayed the path and I learned a lot. And I met a lot of good people and I learned also what not to do. Just it was a really, really rich learning environment that I appreciate very much. And it was the safe incubation that I needed. And after a certain point, though, the egg is ready to hatch. And I think that I probably stayed in the cocoon for a little bit longer than ideal because at a certain point, I did have the idea of like, oh, I want to be a career coach and oh, I want to support people as they navigate their careers. But things were comfortable, as
yeah,
we've been talking about, good income, familiar routine, every day was predictable. It was the misery of certainty or the
yeah,
certainty of misery. And then one day, as I was driving home from work and I stopped off at a liquor store to pick up some beer to enjoy with some friends who were coming over, I had a minor car accident. And when I say minor, I
ooh,
mean like really, really minor, like just like a little,
like
you know,
a dent.
just a
Not
tiny little
even a scratch.
tap. Yeah. And the response to that tiny little incident was so massive. Just like the police got involved, ended up going to like court, and it was so blown up.
It blew up
It blew up. It blew up. And
disproportionately.
it felt so unfair and it felt so ridiculous and it was so infuriating. I got so mad at like everything. And what happened for me was that the car became a symbol for everything that was wrong in my life. Because I was reverse commuting from New York City into New Jersey, which already felt like I'm going in the wrong direction. And I was spending more than 2 hours every day in the car, burning
Ooh,
how much gas, the toll to get back into the city is 15. It was just like, I was spending so much time and energy and money and resources to try and make something that wasn't working work. And I was holding it together and doing a really good job of pretending that it was okay. And this incident just like woke me up. It broke me out of that trance. And I was like, oh, I'm actually not okay. And there's no fixing. There's no like, I've tried all the variables. I've tried to get into different roles. I've tried different companies. I've tried to like change things around. I've tried to be an intrapreneur instead of an entrepreneur. I tried to get more money. I tried to get more time. None of it's working.
right.
So that was when I decided it's time to go.
So you had the tap from the universe, and then you were so mad. And then after the incident, did you continue with your work, or and then
For a
you?
couple months. For a couple months, because like I was on good terms with the people, and also I needed my time to get my ducks in a row, and like because I had a plan. I had a 2-year plan that I was going to put away some money and build
Same.
a client
And now
base.
the chance is like the door came knocking early, and
Yeah,
I'm like, Nick, it's now or never. You
yeah,
gotta take the leap. Even though
yep.
I'm on the last leg of graduating. So and because like you, savings, like, am I is it enough for me to feed myself for the next,
Hmm.
if you see, humans, we tend to think of the worst case scenario again.
Yeah.
Misery of this.
So I quit my job a full year earlier than I thought I would or want to, but which was really scary. My savings
Yes.
account was not as big as I wanted it to be, but it just had to be done.
Right, right. I think I am in your position right now. So the plan was 2 years, 2 years, but then I wouldn't move faster. I should have. In my case, it could be done within a year, but I said now it's already 1 year and 1 year, so it's I've been slacking. So I think this universe, okay, speed it up. Let's go. Even my friends, they were the ones who were scared for me. So Nick, what is your plan? This is my second sabbatical. First sabbatical out of EY, burnout. No, had to take this job, and I think this job saved me. I had to reorient myself, and now this job. Yeah, I guess this time the universe wasn't very cruel, giving me time to adjust. Okay, but you gotta speed it up. So yeah,
Everything happens at the right pace. I don't think I would have. I think I needed the 7 years, 7.5 years in corporate.
same. I've been
You
in
know?
13 years.
Yeah, yeah. There are, and I've been doing this for 6 years now.
Whoa.
And some days I can say, oh, I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve yet, but I've also become a completely different person in the process. And things
Okay.
just take time. Things just take time. And
Right
um,
on.
part of what I teach other people, and honest, if we're being perfectly honest with each other, this is part of what I'm trying to teach myself also, is that there's a really big difference between an accomplishment and the skill it takes to achieve something versus actually enjoying yourself.
I just got chills. So you said you've been practicing on your own. I mean, this is your own practice, right? And it's been 6 years. So
Yeah.
can you share with me? I mean, this is for my own personal consumption, and also if there are other listeners who wants to make the jump but still afraid. And I hope with this episode, or the episodes that you have done with other podcasters as well, can help them, steer their steering wheel a bit. What was it like? What's it like so far? The beginning and now.
The beginning was very disorienting is probably the best word. And this will probably resonate with you because I think you have a similar background as me. Before that moment of quitting, I had spent my entire life with somebody over me telling me what to do. When I was a kid, it was my parents and my teachers. And then when I grew up and got a job, it was my boss telling me, you have to do this project, you have to do it to these specifications, and you have to do it by this deadline. And all of a sudden, I had nobody telling me what to do.
Yes.
I had to be the one to originate that. And there was a very steep learning curve. I was surprised by this. I didn't think this was going to be a thing. I didn't know to expect it. I wish somebody had told me. So I'm telling you now.
Yes, yes.
There was this huge learning curve where I had to go through the whole range of. At first, I replicated the boss, and I was like, I'm going to have my butt in my chair at 9 a.m., and I'm going to sit there until 5 p.m., and I'm going to work, and I'm going to crush myself with deadlines and projects. And I burned myself out. And then I went to the other extreme, and I was like, well, I'm not going to work unless I'm inspired to. And of course, nothing got done. And so I
Yes.
had to learn the art of self-regulation, which again, given how I grew up, I never had to learn that because there was always somebody regulating me, whether it was, there was some authority figure. And, that figure kept changing, but there was always somebody telling me what to do and when I was allowed to rest, when I was allowed to play. And all of a sudden, I was in charge. And if I didn't like something, there was nobody to blame.
So during those days that you were uninspired at all, you didn't. even waking up, it's like, I don't know. I had those episodes as well. What did you do? Who did you turn to, or what did you do to get inspiration?
Well, the difference, this is where there's a big difference between how I was 6 years ago, 4 years ago even, and how things are set up for me today. Because it is a reality that like you just have those mornings. Sometimes you just wake up and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed, right?
Yes.
The difference for me is that now I've adjusted my work and I've figured out what it is that I need to thrive in my work. And so before, when I was just figuring it out, like I didn't know, and so I would just not do it for however long. And, unless it was like client facing, in which case there was somebody counting on me to show up in a certain way. Aside from that, I just wouldn't show up. These days, I have a much better understanding of myself and what I need. I teach something to my clients called the care card, which is like when you buy a plant, it always comes with a little card that says, this is how much light I need. This is how much water I need. And if you can follow these instructions and provide those conditions, then the plant's going to do very well. It's going to thrive. And if you don't, then the leaves are going to be sad, they're going to be droopy, they're going to turn brown, and eventually the plant will die. And so what I teach is how to figure out what's on your care card for you to thrive, for you to have the sense of being fulfilled by what you do. Because I define career satisfaction as when you're in an environment doing something that you are like your personality can come out and just play. And you're in an environment where that is appreciated, it's valued, and you don't need to be or pretend to be something else, right? Because that's what I think causes a lot of burnout, is pretending to be something you're not. It's so energetically expensive is how I phrase it, when you have to pretend. Um, and so when I work with people, I help them shape their career so that more and more of their personality is at play, and it becomes just some more natural for them to be where they are, because all they have to do is be themselves. They're working, of course, they're putting in energy and effort, but they're just being themselves, and they don't have that weight of, oh, I need to put on this gigantic mask and it has 3 layers to it, and like it has the perfect presentation, and then it takes all weekend to take it off and to recharge, and then by the time Sunday evening rolls around, they've
You
finally just
start,
gotten to
yeah.
baseline, and they have to put it back on, right?
Your armor, your
Yeah,
suit.
exactly. So going back to your question of like what happens when I have those mornings, these days I don't really get those mornings as much because I've shaped my work to fit my personality. One of the things I really enjoy doing, for example, is connecting with people. This is why podcasting is a really good way for me to do my marketing, because all I have to do is come on and connect with someone. I don't need to like, write a, you know, super,
Pitch. You gotta pitch, and then,
yeah,
hey, look at me. I'm this career satisfaction coach. I mean,
exactly.
wow, I'm getting lots of downloads because once I have this thing in my head. And once I graduate, okay, I'm still scared. Like, how am I gonna get the clients, the therapy clients that I hope for and that can sustain me? But I believe in higher power. They put me here, so I think I'm gonna survive, regardless of how it is. To be honest, I enjoy talking to people as well, like you, and why I started podcasting. And I'm teaching myself how to transition between just having this conversation to really be client facing with the therapy. So it's like, yeah, it gets me out of the comfort zone. So all right. So okay, how did your experience playing piano at a high level and performing at Carnegie Hall shape your perspective on career satisfaction?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, the piano wasn't really my passion, right? It was my parents' passion. And I want to be very clear that they were doing it in my best interests, or what they saw as their as my best interests. It just wasn't my thing. I was much more interested in other stuff. I was much more interested in building a potato cannon with my friends. And, we did this for an extra credit project for physics class one day. Or I was on the swim team and I really enjoyed that. I wasn't going to win anything. I was pretty good, but I wasn't that good. Certainly not like, you know, elite Olympic level good, just pretty good. And it for me, it laid that foundation of there's a really big difference between having a skill versus actually enjoying it, right? I was highly, highly skilled in piano to the point where I could perform in one of the best concert halls in the world. And also, like I submitted the recording to colleges and they never said because of your recording you get the scholarship, but I'm pretty sure that there was a strong correlation there. Or certainly added to the package. So it was very good, but it was very confusing for me that I was like, how am I so good at something, but like not enjoy it? It was, I remember, speaking of college applications, I remember writing in my college essay, like, look, if I can do something this well and not be that into it, imagine what I could do if I actually had my passion aligned.
There it is. It was that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, we're so conditioned to follow our skill, right? To do what we're good at. That's what our parents praise us for. It's what our teachers praise us for. Good job, you're so smart. Good job, you got good grades. You got, an A in that class. And very rarely do we stop to consider, did you enjoy it? Did you feel like yourself doing it? And that carries on into our careers, where, almost every single day, when I talk to somebody who's coming into my practice, it's some version of I fell into this career and I was good at it, and so I kept going, and now my tank is empty.
Soul tank is empty. Thank you. You reminded me of a question I wanted to ask earlier. So when people come to you for your service, what can they expect from that? Like, I don't expect is like such a very demanding word, but how are you like walking them? Are you holding their hands or are you providing them a framework? How do you do it?
Yeah, so there's definitely a framework, and I'm gonna say, and it's going to sound extremely simple, and it is. I'm proud to say that it's quite elegant, but it's also trickier than it sounds. So there are 3 steps to the process of creating a fulfilling career. Step 1 is to know yourself. And when I say know yourself, it's not just like you go to therapy and you get a better sense of yourself. Of course, that's important. But what's really valuable about knowing yourself is you get a vocabulary that you can use to describe yourself to other people so they can understand you also. And for you to understand yourself well enough to know this is what I need and this is what I don't want. So we develop that care card in the first step. When you have that awareness of yourself and what you need in order to thrive, the next question, very natural, is okay, where can I find that? So the next step is setting your destination. And then once you know your destination, very next question is how do I make it happen? So the third step is making it a reality. Now, this is where most people try to start because it's resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile, interview strategy, all of that stuff. But to me, that comes at the end when you've kind of figured yourself out. It's very easy to bang your head against the wall and submit your resume to like 1,000 places and get rejected from 9 of them if you don't come from the root. So all of the work that comes before, I like to say, is slowing down so you can speed up. And I've had this experience over and over and over again with my clients where, the first 2-3 months of working together is like, why are we talking about this? And then bearings, once we know where they want to go and how to get there, it moves lightning fast where, you just get the right resume into the right hands, and then the next day the company is calling you up to say, don't even worry about the phone interview, just come into our offices tomorrow. This actually happened with a client.
Wow. Getting to the root of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you fix it, everything else will follow.
Yep.
I like that. So, next question. What are some of the common misconceptions people have about career satisfaction and how we can change the narrative around it.
Probably the biggest misconception is that a single move is going to, or a single accomplishment is going to create your career satisfaction. Like, oh, if only I got this promotion. Oh, if only I step into this role. Oh, if only I change
If
industries,
only.
then I'll be happy, right?
Yes.
And I heard you say some version of this, like, oh, once I graduate and once I get into my business, have my own practice, then I'll be happy. And of course, it's a very understandable sentiment, right? And the reality is that career satisfaction is a choice that you make over and over and over and over and over again. It is a continuous choice that you keep making, which means that it's much more continuous. It's much more day to day. It's not as sexy as, oh, I got this huge promotion
That's
and
a
here
good
is
one.
like a
That's a good
30%
one.
raise and whatever,
That's
right?
a good one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not sexy. It what it actually is making a decision of, I'm going to sign off from my laptop no later than 6 o'clock every night and not respond to emails. Or I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation with my boss about this promotion that I want. Or I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation with, my coworker who has been violating my boundaries. Or all the way to, I'm going to quit my job and do something different, right? There's a whole range, and it's not just inclusive. It's not just the leaps. And then even when you make the leap, well, now what, right?
Yeah.
How
Now,
are you gonna how's it gonna be in the new job? How are you gonna
yeah.
set the right expectations? How are you gonna train people how to treat you? This is why it's so important to have done all the work before of what's on your care card. What do you need in order to thrive? Because if you don't have that, how do you expect to create that later? Because the risk is that you just get into a new job and then repeat the whole pattern because you don't know what you're trying to control for. You don't know what you're trying to improve. So in your case, it's going to be like, what clients are you going to see? That one was
What's
a
my
big,
niche? Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes that, look, you just have to experiment. But this is also where paying close attention is really, really valuable. And this is also what I tell, like when I work with people and they're like, can you talk to my son? Can you talk to my niece? And their niece is like 16 years old and still in high school and can't decide what they want to do with their lives. I'll talk to them. I don't even charge for that because it's just like, they're so early in their lives. And I'm just like, look, you don't know. That's okay. What you're supposed to do right now is experiment. The important thing to do is to notice the results you get. So if you like something, great, go do more of it. If you don't like something, cool, also cool. That's information. Why didn't you like it? And go from there. So I know that my favorite kinds of clients are, for example, are the ones who go to therapy or are open to it, and they already have their own therapist. And actually, therapists make up a really big portion of my referral base. That's not to say that I won't work with somebody who isn't already in therapy, but it's that like openness to exploration that I'm really interested in, because that's kind of a prerequisite to make my process work. If you just want a resume, you should probably go to somebody else. But if you want to understand yourself, then I'm your guy, right? That came from a lot of experimenting and realizing, maybe I don't want to just be the resume editor, because that's what I did when I started. And then I got very bored very quickly.
Experimenting. So
Mm-hmm.
so before setting up your practice, did you have to go for like additional certifications, qualifications to get yourself like anchored?
I am trained as a master NLP practitioner. I didn't have that when I started because I had enough, practical experience navigating the corporate world. And I also had a training as a relationship coach, which, believe it or not, was very professionally advantageous. Not for any kind of relational, I wasn't doing relationship coaching at work, but the ability to sit with someone and like have more interest in the relational aspect was very, very useful.
Regardless if it's romantic or platonic,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
relationship is a relationship,
Yeah.
whether, doesn't matter what the context is, a relationship is a relationship.
Yeah.
So I had those as my like starting building blocks. But then eventually I started to have the experience of 85% of the time when I gave people advice, they would do it. And then there was the 15% of people that was like, it didn't matter how many times I tried and how good the advice was. And have you ever had the experience of there's something you want to do, you know how to do it, you have the time to do it, you have the resources to do it, the conditions are just right, but then you don't do it anyway?
Exercise, running.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. There you go.
Sunny day. I got my shoes on. My favorite jogging track pants are there, folded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm,
everything is
yeah.
set up, and you even might even have the best running coach in the world, but you just don't do it. And so that kept happening for a small minority of my clients, and I was like, as their coach, it is my responsibility to understand what's going on and to be able to work through this, because obviously just saying more accountability is not the answer because it's not working. So that's where I got into learning about NLP. NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. And what I was very interested in is like, how do I work with this resistance? How do I get curious about it? How do I understand where it comes from? Not so much in a, psychology and therapy kind of way, although it is quite related, and more from like, how do we dissolve this block? How do we work through it? How do we identify what are the belief and identities that are making it so that you don't keep running into this wall? And so back to the running, that's a great example. So you might notice that there is a way around that, which is just apply a ton of willpower and you can get yourself out the door. And that will work maybe 15% of the time, right? Because when you're out of willpower, then sorry, it's not happening. What I learned to do through this training was to help people rewire their brains and their beliefs to go from having to will themselves out the door and like really like build up that head of steam to changing the way they see themselves and understand themselves, to just be like, I am somebody who wakes up in the morning and goes running. Now, can you like feel the difference in like how much energy needs to be spent? Because if you simply are somebody who does it, then it just happens.
Natural. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. This has now become a bit of a coaching session. This is why I love talking to people. I learned so much. Thank you for that, Anthony. Right. Okay. We have a few more questions. What do you think about quiet quitting?
I have thoughts. I have thoughts. If you read the commentary online, which honestly nobody should, because social media is just set up to make you really mad at something. But if you read it, it's all like, it's either from the employer side, this generation doesn't want to work. And from the employee side, that generation doesn't understand how difficult it
Yeah.
is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
And it's just like butting heads. Quiet quitting to me, I mean, first of all, it's just a fancy new language for
Buzzword.
something that's been in existence since the beginning of time. It's just somebody who's, as millennials, we're sort of in between this, but like we used to call it phoning it in, right? Like
Yes.
it's a little bit older language, but like, just coasting, just doing the bare minimum to not get fired. Now there's a little bit of a middle finger that's attached to it.
That's added
You
into
know,
like IDGAF culture.
yeah, but it's also like that's been around too. It's not new, right? Sticking it to the man again is what it used to be
Mm,
called. So
yeah.
first of all, let's like take away the newness of it. It's not anything new. It's been happening. The second thing that I feel quite strongly about is to recognize quiet quitting for what it really is, which is a survival tactic. If somebody's quiet quitting, they're in survival mode. They're in like a protective crouch to protect their energy, which is very necessary at times. Sometimes that is the appropriate thing to do, right? If you are, if your time and your energy, it is valuable. But at a certain point, it makes me sad to think about somebody perceiving their career as like just the bare minimum way to make ends meet, because our career takes up so much valuable
Of
real
our
estate in our
time.
lives,
Yeah.
right? It's like you probably spend more time at work
At
with
work.
your coworkers than you do with your own family.
Yes.
It's the best hours of your day. It's the best years of your life.
Yes.
So whether you think about it this way or not, you are putting down an investment. And so do you want the bare minimum return for your investment, or do you want to actually get something out of it? To me, that like it's such precious real estate that I have a very high bar for what I'm willing to do. And, quiet quitting is, again, it's a survival tactic. It also registers to me as like a sign of desperation and feeling trapped and feeling like you don't have other options. Because if you had better options on your menu, you would just choose them. You would go somewhere else. You would do something else. And so for this like protective stance to be adopted, that needs to be the best option on someone's menu. Um, so I tend to approach this with like a lot of empathy and a lot of curiosity. Like how is it that somebody is that this is the best item on their menu? And then also I start to get curious about like what's not being met so that someone has to do this. And then also what would it be like for them to be able to be more themselves, right? Because when someone is more open, yes, they're more vulnerable to attack, they're more vulnerable to being taken advantage of.
Hurt. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're also more open to express themselves.
Well, it's the same thing as investment. Higher risk, putting yourself out there, higher
Mhm.
return. And to me, I apply that back to the happiness. Like, so if you don't, I don't know, maybe some people don't agree. I have a friend who studies evolutionary psychology. She's kind of against it. I mean, not 100%, but my word is for you to experience true happiness, you've got to first experience sorrow, true sorrow. So then you get to really enjoy and understand what does happiness mean to you. And for her, she's like, but we shouldn't equate that you have to suffer first, then you can be happy. I'm not saying that. It's just the end of the spectrum is a duality, right? So what is next for you, Anthony?
More of this, I think. More but better. More but even more and more me. Like I said, the this journey is really about self-expression, and our careers are a big part of how we express ourselves. And something that I'm really leaning into is community, as this is something that I'm realizing is very, very important to me and is something that I value very highly. And it started to reflect itself in the way I work. I started with working with people one-on-one. This is very natural for someone in this line of work. And more recently, in the last year or two, I've really, really enjoyed working with people in groups. And the
Oh,
thing that was
really?
really surprising about working with people in groups is I thought it was just going to be like have 6 or 7 one-on-one sessions in tandem and like I become the hub.
It's like a classroom type of
Exactly. I
setting,
am the
right?
expert. And what has been both really relieving as well as enlightening is that that's not happened. Of
Hmm.
course, I'm there to set the space, be the, I curate and I help set the stage and set the culture and make it safe. And what really happens is that everyone becomes the authority on something, on themselves
It's
and on each
beautiful.
other. And I don't have to work so hard either because,
Yeah,
right, it's not just
because you're
me.
leveraging. Yeah.
Everyone is in it together. And, career dissatisfaction is one of those things that's really hard to talk about out in the open because like you're not going to go on LinkedIn and post how unhappy you are. Like that would just that just doesn't work.
People
That's
often,
not
yeah, that's not glamorous, of
no.
course. Don't
It's not
nobody wants to
glamorous. It's
see
also
your.
it's also perceived frequently as not even appropriate.
Yeah,
And you'd get in
yeah,
trouble for it in a lot of
yeah.
cases. So you really only whisper about it, with your friends and families and maybe your closest coworkers if you've like ascertained that they are safe enough to talk about this too. But like how relaxing can it be when you don't have to explain your experience to somebody because they already get it. Right? Kind of like what you felt when you read my profile and we started talking like I know what you're going through because I've been through it.
Yes.
And I know from personal experience that like how exhausting it is to try to explain yourself to somebody who may have a ton of judgments about what you're doing. and they're really concerned for you because they care about you, but they just don't get it because they just
Yeah.
what the choices you're making are just so foreign to them. That's really
So,
exhausting.
so it's so jarring to
Yeah.
them. Like, how can he or she think of it this way?
Yeah.
What about stability?
Oh yeah. I mean, what about health insurance? I live in the
Yeah,
United
yeah, yeah.
States,
Oh,
so
yes.
that's a
Health
that's a huge
insurance.
problem
Yeah.
here. Like, that was one of the main questions I received was, what are you going to do for health insurance? And I was like, I'll figure it out.
Exactly, right? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're already experiencing it now. Like, how valuable is it to be able to go through this journey with a community of people who are going through a parallel journey? Some people are going to be a little bit ahead of you. Some people are going to have, be a few steps behind you, and just help each other and relate to each other and offer resources to each other. It's been really, really beautiful to witness and to hold. And, what's next for me is more of that. I think I'm going to be leaning more and more into that kind of work because I've realized that it really, really fills me up.
You're doing great work, Anthony. So you
Oh,
just
thank
you
you.
just made something secure. If I do, no, not if. When I open my practice, they need some they need help with the career, I'll send them your way.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yes. I mean, because we're in this line. I'm gonna be in this line already. So this
Hmm.
is also why I'm networking, It's
Yeah.
this is great. This is yeah, because I believe in that. I before leaving my consulting job, I felt like I was me against the world, and it is not a nice feeling, and I do not wish that upon anybody. So yeah.
No, it takes a team. I truly believe that it takes a team. I actually, I do a lot of networking with therapists. I also do a lot of networking with career coaches, and I often make friends with them. And people look at me sometimes like, what are you doing, talking to your competition? And like, I'll openly share my ideas and like, and I'm like, there are enough unhappy people who need our help. I can't take all of them. Um, and also the ones that really are open to this with me are the ones that I will trust the most to refer to because we share a certain affinity to each other. For example, everything I've been talking about with you today has been more in the upstream part of the process of like, who am I? What do I want to be in when I grow up, right? It's what I do is really good for people who know they want to change, but aren't quite ready, don't know really what they would change to. Like they probably could get another job in their same industry tomorrow if they wanted to, but like they don't want to. Right?
Yeah.
So I my work is really, really good for that. I have a colleague and friend that we've been kind of circling and dancing around each other, and we're kind of like, we'll probably work together, like we'll collaborate on something at some point in the future. But she specializes in resume work and in interview strategy. Now I'm pretty decent at it, but she's really, really good at it. And
She
she has
enjoys it,
like,
right?
well, she also has like writing staff to help with it.
Mm,
So she's like really professionalized that. So I'm like, you know way more about this than I do. And, to the extent that I could help somebody, like often it's enough. But if somebody comes to me and they're like, they really need help with their resume, or they already kind of know what they want to do, but they don't know how to talk about themselves,
yeah.
she is the right person to help. So I often, when I meet with somebody for the first time, I'm also making an assessment like, am I the right person to be on your
Yeah.
team, or is
So
one of my
important.
other
Yeah.
trusted colleagues?
Correct. Correct. Oh, I think I'm in the right path. I feel it. I also wanted to add on the part where you said you talking to your competitors does not diminish your value, because I believe there's enough cake for everyone.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
infinite. You don't
yeah,
have to snatch from people. No,
yeah.
it's abundant.
Yeah, it's a really interesting too. Like my wife is a therapist. So
Ah,
like
okay.
I kind of understand the world through her, and I've become tapped into like the like some of the networking and referral networks, and it is like pretty lively in there. It's like I'm looking for, a psychologist who specializes in this, and I have a patient whose wife needs support with that. Like, do you know anybody? And it's just like there's so much collaboration and so much like referral, cross referral activity that it really makes me happy to see it.
My heart just lit up just like that. I'm excited. I can already feel that because I've been talking to a lot of people as well. And then I have this idea of getting all of my speakers one day come and talk about their platform,
Mm,
talk about their expertise, and then people can just join. And then we'll see. I will be in contact with you. Let's stay in
sounds
touch.
wonderful. I will look forward to that.
Like a symposium. I had okay. Maybe let me just Google if there's something that's been done like that. But yeah, maybe I can make a twist into it. Add some twist, put some twist into it. So I'll connect definitely. I'll have more time since I'm taking my sabbatical. So right, two more questions, Anthony. So what is your heart's greatest wish?
My heart's greatest wish. Ah, what a lovely question.
Thank you.
I mean, I think really it is to love and to be loved. Quite simple, really.
Well, yeah, well, we complicate things even when it's just that love. Okay, so is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
I mean, sometimes I have trouble falling asleep because I'm too excited about what I'm working on, and then I have to like teach myself to shut it down so I can actually get some rest.
That is way better feeling than feeling anxious about, oh, how am I gonna face my, I don't know, my presentation tomorrow, my
Mm-hmm.
boss. Oh,
Yeah.
too many
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Usually it's just too many ideas firing off, and I need to like either tell my subconscious to like
Slow it down.
hang on to that and feed the conscious mind tomorrow morning when
Yeah.
it's got some juice, or I just like get up and I keep a notebook by my on my nightstand for moments just like this, and I'm like I just write it down like few keywords just to jog my memory, and then I can go to sleep.
Beautiful. So, last question. If you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Career should work for your life, not the other way around.
What a way to wrap our interview today. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Anthony, for your insights and your candid, honest sharing. I am really appreciative of everything. And I feel much more confident as to where I'm going next. I'm about to take that leap. You've taken it last 6 years. I'm about to take it. Yeah, it's life doesn't stop at 30. Certainly will not stop. Yeah, it's there's something out there. I guess all of this we're just preparing us for what we're meant to do. That just clicked. Well, thank you, Anthony, for your time.
Thank you.
We are connected via, I think I followed you on Instagram. I will follow you on LinkedIn. And I thank you for the work that you do. Anything unfolds, I will reach out to
I'll be following your journey with great interest.
you. Okay. Well, you have a great day. And I wish you the best in your life.
Thank you. You too.
We'll be connecting. I'm pretty
We'll
sure.
be in touch, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Bye bye.
Thank you.